gather round for the tale of the birth of Chulane. And so it was that Fergus and the exiles of Ulster went to live in Connacht with the enemies of their tribe. But there were still many great warriors among the men who served Connachtbar, though none were greater than Setana, who later took the name Chulane. The story of Chulane's birth is strange and wondrous. There was a day when the crops of Ulster were attacked and eaten by 9 scores of male and female birds, each pair bound by a silver cord between them. Connachtbar and his men were furious to see their harvest destroyed, and so mounted their chariots to drive the birds away. Among them came Dech, Connachtbar's sister, the warrior Conall, and the troublemaker Brigrew. They chased the birds south along the mountains and plains of Ireland until dusk fell, and they reached the ancient mountains of the Burg on the Boyne River. Connachtbar sent Conall and Brigrew to seek shelter for the night, but the only place they could find was a small hut in which a poor couple lived. Brigrew told the king that they needn't bother going there unless they brought their own food, but Connachtbar took his men to the hut nonetheless and crowded inside. They broke down the door of the storeroom and helped themselves to all the couple had. Soon they were drunk and in a festive mood. The woman who lived there in the hut began to go into labour, at the same time as a mare in the yard was giving birth to 2 foals. Dech went to help the woman deliver her child, and not long after brought out a baby boy. The Ulster men took charge of the child and decided to give him the 2 foals as a present, while Dech nursed him at her own breast. Then the whole company fell asleep. When the sun rose the next morning, the Ulster men awoke to find there was nothing to be seen of the hut or the couple. Only the baby and the foals remained. Then they took the boy back to Emain Macha, and Dech raised him as her own son. But soon the baby was struck with a fever and died. Dech was heartbroken, and all the women of Ulster sang a song of lamentation for the child. She came home after lamenting and asked her servant for a drink. A cup was brought, and Dech drank it, but she didn't notice that a tiny creature was in the cup, and she swallowed it. When Dech fell asleep that night, she dreamed a man came to her and told her she would bear a child by him. He said his name was Luke, and he had led her and her company to the Burg on the Boyne River. The boy who had been born there was his son. Even though the child seemed to die, he was now in fact in her womb. She was to name the boy Setana, and the 2 foals were to be raised with him. Dech grew great with child, though no one knew who the father was. Some say it was Connachtbar himself, who had slept with his own sister in his drunkenness. The king said nothing, but he gave his pregnant sister to the Sultan Mac Roik to marry. Dech was so ashamed to go to her husband's bed pregnant that she miscarried on her wedding night. Then she slept with Sultan, became pregnant, and gave birth to a son she named Setanta, a boy who had been born 3 times. When Setana was born, the greatest men and women of Ulster contended to some day to take him as his foster son, as was the custom. They went to Connachtbar the king to decide between them. "My sister Finichlum should take the boy," he said. "I do love him," she replied, "as if you would own my own son, Conall." Brigrew the troublemaker spoke up. "Of course you love him. There's little difference between a son and a nephew." "Wait," said Sintra, chief judge and the wisest man of Ulster. "I have a better plan for the foster parent than Fincham. I am a fine warrior, as well as the best judge and adviser in all matters of the king. I settle all disputes in Ulster, and everyone acknowledges my wisdom." "No," said Balbrugga, the warrior most renowned among the Ulstermen for his hospitality. "The boy should come to live with me, I can feast all the men of Ireland in my house for a week without want. I can support him better than anyone else. Not true, said Fergus. I am second to no man in courage, skill in battle, and honour. Sit down, Fergus, said Amargan the poet, and listen, all of you. I am most worthy to raise the boy. For in eloquence and brave deeds I have no equal. There is nothing that to be gained by all this fighting, said Knock Barbos. Let Mordan the druid decide. And so Moran gave his judgment. Let him be given to Connachtbar as his foster son, for he is the brother of Finchalam, and to Finchalam as a mother, and Connell to his foster brother. But let him be given to Sencha to teach him eloquence of speech, and for Blybringa for sustenance, and to Fergus to sit on his knee, and Amorgran as his teacher. In this way he will be raised by everyone, as warrior, prince, and sage. The boy will be cherished by all, and will someday save us someday from our enemies. That's enough of me butchering Irish names. I'm here to talk to you about the deck tech. And this is my deck tech for the brand new Brawl Commander, Chulane, Teller of Tales. Whose name comes from the legendary Irish hero, Chulane, which is kind of like the origin story, which I just read. Would you like me to read more of this? Because, I don't know. I like Celtic mythology. It's cool. Yeah. But Chulane, so Chulane, it's the new Brawl Recon. So, it's kind of like a mini commander release where there's not as many new cards. Each deck only has one new commander. But they're pretty neat. And I've had my eye on Chulane for one reason. My humans deck. So those of you who have known me for a while know that I love humans in EDH, and my humans deck has gone through many, many iterations. It started as Sigarda, and then it went to Samut for Naya, because I wanted to add some punch, and there was also some original Innistrad red human synergies. Then I went to 4-color with Saskia, and then I was like, you know what, humans really should be 5-color, so I made them 5-color humans. And then 5-color humans became a deck of modern, and it stopped feeling so novel. And I was like, maybe the only 5-color human at the time, General Tazri, isn't that good. And I went back to 4-color. And then I was like, you know what, I've lost focus of this deck. Then I pulled back to being 2-color with Sigarda. And now, when Throne of Eldraine comes out, I'm going to be changing it yet again to Bond with Chulane, Teller of Tales. And that is the pronunciation. It is Chulane. But yeah, so Chulane, Teller of Tales, he's 2 in band for a 2/4 vigilance. And whenever you cast a creature spell, you may draw a card, and then you put a land card from your hand onto the battlefield. So on creature cast, you get a growth spiral, which is a really nice effect. And you may pay 3 and tap him to balance a creature you control your own hand. And when you think about the playstyle of playing humans, is you're playing lots of small guys and you want to chain them together, and Chulane helps you do that. And yeah, he doesn't have any direct human synergies, but let's be honest, Sigarda didn't really have great human synergies either. Giving all of my humans hexproof wasn't that useful when all of my individual humans weren't that impactful. So this thing, which actually going with also humans also do a lot with ETP effects, and as kind of just like a mini sub theme, at least that I push in this one, this build, and it lets you bounce them back to your hand and replay them and get all that nice on cast goodies. And it just kind of works out really well. Also, I've always been a fan of the stories of Chulane, and even though I can't pronounce any of the names in them, because Irish is hard. Irish is really hard to actually name anything. It's impossible. I'm terrible. But yeah, so ban humans. A few things it adds some cool new toys. In terms of with adding blue to the deck. I'm not. That said, blue is really much a splash in this deck. It is still that kind of Selesnya core of the deck, with some more toys added. So first off, let's just talk about mana base. The actual color fixing is very rough. I haven't settled on what my final color fixing will be. It's essentially standard 3 color fixing. This deck is actually only running 33 lands because it does have a much lower mana curve than most EDH decks. And like, sure, there's some top-end, and also Chulane is also ramping you. So it's built in. And I just have like some balance lands, just standard stuff. I love this new command tower art. It is gorgeous. E-Wilds, Exotic Orchards, Path of Ancestry. I mean, that's one benefit of Sigarda, or Chulane over Sigarda, is that Sigarda does not work with Path of Ancestry, because we're a human stack, but our commander is an angel. Chulane actually is a human. The Quarry Tower, like, Chulane has actually the ability to draw us a lot of cards, so. Seaside Citadel, obviously, because you play your on-color tri-lands. Timberwolf Expanse and Unclaimed Territory. Pretty standard stuff. From a ramp perspective, Absence Pilgrim, I mean, it's a cheap creature for true Chulane, not Chulane. That is not his name. He is just Chulane, Teller of Tales. It's just a mana dork. It's kind of like, it's a Llanowar elf that taps for white, not green, which is a cool thing, and is a human. Cryptal of Right, at the end of this day, this deck is still trying to make a lot of small creatures, and Cryptal of Right does that, well, doesn't do that, but it benefits. It turns all of our guys into mana dorks, and it's also a deck that can actually want a lot of mana at times if you want to have those really explosive turns with, like, both, like, tapping Chulane to bounce them back and also play at the same turn. It helps to have that extra mana, and Cryptal of Right helps with that. Cold Fate, just standard ramp. For the most part, it's just standard green ramp. Farseek, Kodama's Reach, Rampant Growth. Running Shaman of Forgotten Ways. He is a 3-mana mana dork that like can but it adds 2, but only for non-creature spell or for creature spells. Normally it's just he's a good guy for just kind of like dumping your hand, which this deck wants to do. But also if you have Formidable and you can make 11, which this deck can potentially get to, you get to Biorhythm, which means everyone's life total becomes a number of creatures they control. And for non-creature decks, that's not good for them. And for most decks, it usually puts them in striking distance of killing them with my very creature aggro heavy strategy. But that's more of kind of like a side thing. I'm mostly playing with them for like the ramp purposes. And then finally, the only non-green ramp source I'm running is Soul Ring, because Soul Ring. Alright, off past the boring mana base part and onto the bulk, the meat of this, and that is, okay, let's take advantage of balancing things to our hand, things like kind of being replayed and all that. Agent of Treachery. Let's first off, humans have a lot of cool ETB effects, and if you play Standard recently, Agent of Treachery you might have seen from a few places, like Reanimator and stuff. But he's a 7-mana human, so he's one of the top pieces of our curve, but it's just ETB, gain control of target permanently. So you can like bounce it back, and the owning 3 or more permanents you don't control thing isn't really what this deck is looking to do, but mostly it's just a thing that to help like balance back. And I will say, you'll see lots of ETB stuff, but I decided to not go all in on necessarily that theme. Like Chulane cares about casting, not ETB. So things like flickers and stuff, I'm not running because just the deck doesn't need them. And I want to focus on human tribal and not just making I want to be a Chulane humans deck with like the blink, like recasting things sub-theme, not a Chulane deck with a human sub-theme. And that's kind of where I'm trying to stay focused. So I'm not running Panharmonicon to my dismay, and some other things like that. I am focusing on the humans part of it. And Agent of Treachery, just a good ETB human. Also a cool effect in blue that we're getting from this. Borderland Ranger. This is a guy that will get us a basic cutter for deck, which is nice with Chulane, because you cast it, well, the next creature you cast it was just like, if you're bouncing this back to your hand, you're filling your hand with your like basics, and like just getting all the basics out of your deck, and like you get to play them with Chulane, and it's just great. Cloud Blazer, one of the best ETB humans, honestly. It's a 5-mana 2/2 flying that also gains 2 life and you draw 2 cards. It is the Azor. It's Mold Drifter number 2, except this one is a human, not an elemental. Courageous Outrider, which is 4 mana, but when you enter battlefield, you get to essentially kind of like commune for humans. You look it up for and like find a human, put in your hand. So just a nice repeatable card advantage source, and kind of card selection. More on the enabling front, we have Deputy of Quiddles, who both can save something, but also balances something back to your hand to reuse a ETB effect, or just something cheap to recast to trigger Chulane. It just makes sense. Of course, if you're talking about humans with ETB effects, you can't not include Eternal Witness. It's Eternal Witness. And this is a deck that's really using Eternal Witness to its full value, where you are balancing it back to your hand. And one thing though that I will note, and I'll talk about this at the end, is that a lot of the good things to enable balancing things back to your hand they're kind of expensive. So your things like Cloudstone Curios and Erratic Portals, they are not cheap cards, and I haven't included them yet. There are things, okay, Cloudstone Curio is probably outside of my range of like things I want to pay for, because it's like $30 to $40, and it's nuts. But things like Erratic Portal, like I'll get those eventually, but I just don't have them yet. But like I said, this is mostly just things that synergies with Chulane. By the end of the day, we are trying to just be a human stack. So, Ewit, very good. Lina, Selfless Champion. This is kind of like helps her go wide strategy, where she ETBs and she doesn't make humans, but she does help us go wide, and we do have payoffs for going wide. Renegade Rallier, which it's 2 white, 2 green white, and essentially if you have Revolt, which with Chulane isn't hard to get, you essentially get to reanimate something from your graveyard. So that can be a land, a cheap creature, whatever. And yeah. Shardless Agent, nice cheap little cascade creature. Like this deck does have lots of 1 and 2 drops, so you can recast this for a while before you run dry. And this is one that physically wouldn't work in a blink deck, and you specifically need this kind of like a cares about casting deck. Thalia's Lieutenant, it's a cheap one to blink. She's only 2 mana, but it just buffs my entire board by putting counters on them. And when blinking your other stuff and playing that and like chaining other humans, she grows also very quite fast too. So it's kind of like works on both sides if you're blinking her or just other things around you. I keep saying blinking, and I will keep saying blinking, but what I mean is bounce to your hand and recast. I don't mean like ephemerate. We got Freeman Inspector, like just a cheap one. Like honestly, at the end of the day, this is like, hey, I have 4 spare mana. I will tap Chulane, bounce Freeman Inspector, replay Freeman Inspector, growth cycle, and get a clue, and be pretty happy with that. Also, just like it's decent. Like honestly, Freeman Inspector. Think of it this way. You would play Elvish Visionary in an Elves deck. This is an Elvish Visionary that's slightly more expensive, but in 2 payments, and that's honestly perfectly fine, but for a human stack. And, yeah. That's kind of how I view 3-Bin Inspector. And finally we have War Priest of Thune, who, on ETB, destroys an enchantment, so it's kind of like, Chulane can, like, bounce something back to, demystify something, which is, I mean, EDH has a lot of problematic enchantments that run around that you gotta take care of, and being able to repeatedly do that is nice. Why aren't you part of removal? You should probably be in the removal section. I don't know where I put it there. Also, as always, link deck list to this will be in the description. But yeah, so that's kind of like I said, I'm not going for all in. I'm not making necessarily a Chulane deck. I am making a human stack with Chulane at the helm. And these are just kind of things that synergize with it. But getting at the actual humans themselves, let's go over the human synergies and what like makes a human deck tick. Probably the best human synergy card in the game is Angel of Glory's Rise. It is a 7-minute angel that just reanimates every single human in your graveyard at once. It's a, I mean, it's not quite a Rise of the Dark Realms because it only hits your graveyard, but it also it destroys any incidental zombies that are on the board, which is sometimes relevant. I've had it actually be relevant a fair few times, but just reanimate your entire board, like so far, like, which gives you like a good way to just kind of really reestablish a board state from a not great position. And one thing to be said is that without red, it is hard to capitalize on this because there's no really good ways to give mass haste to your group. But I mean, a lot of them are having EDB effects, so you're getting lots of value from her regardless. Yeah. Cavalry Pegasus. It's just a cheap little creature that's easy to like just forget about, but on attack it gives all your attacking humans flying. Essentially, just this is an aggro deck, and giving this sort of evasion to your entire team is very welcome. Militia Captain, who is kind of like an anthem effect, but only on attack when it attacks for blocks. So, I mean, you take your anthems where you can get them, and you take your lords. Heron's Grace Champion, who is 2 green-white, and you could consider this someone a potential target to blink, but not really. But it's a flash of lifelink, and when it enters the battlefield, other humans control get +1/+1 in lifelink until end of turn, which is, like, it isn't a huge effect, but it is a human, and it can actually provide for a very nice, just like, life game buffer, where you're having a big attack, they make blocks, like, it can ruin some combat math, because one benefit of, like, EDH is that no one is expecting a combat trick, and for something that, like, leaves an okay body behind, and will give you a nice, like, life total swing, like, this isn't a terrible combat trick. And Chulane lets you balance it. It also lets you trigger Chulane at flash speed, which just seems decent. Mayor of Avabrook, the original human lord. I don't have the other side, which is just a werewolf lord. You don't want to flip this thing. That said, in EDH, it's usually kind of hard to flip werewolves, so yeah. Metallic Mimic. You name human, and then all other humans and remove counters on it. It's just kind of like a weird other, like, lord that sticks around, but it's not a retroactive lord, but it also stays around if it gets removed, so it's like, it's a weird take on a lord, but it's good, and it should be in most tribal decks that aren't, like, big tribal, like dragons. Obelisk of Erd, essentially it's a 6-mana artifact with Convoke, and essentially it will give all our guys +2/+2. And like I said, this is kind of like a small, it has a go wide component, although not quite as go wide as necessarily strictly Selesnya does. +2/+2 is nothing to sneeze at. Sigarda, Heron's Grace, no longer at the helm, but I mean, 2 mana to just stuff that in your graveyard that isn't doing anything more, just cycle that and turn into human soldiers. And this deck does have things that hexproof is so much more useful for. You're not a small creature go wide, you're not like green-white weenie, and like things like Chulane will be targets for removal, and Sigarda protects that, which is very nice, and you don't want that to happen. So Sigarda, yes, thank you now. Protect us even if you're not in the helm anymore. I'm sorry you got demoted, but you're still not bad. And then Vanquisher's Banner, which is a 5-mana artifact, and essentially it's an anthem for that. And whenever you cast a creature's card of their chosen type, draw a card, which works really well, and it's just another piece of that engine where Chulane is already drawing his card for everything. So now every human that we cast is divination on top of that, is just like very good. Fun fact, that is good. And also just like means that you can chain your creatures together so much more. And now we're going into the actual just humans, like the bread and butter of the deck. It's just like humans that necessarily don't have synergies, but just do work. First we have Baird, Steward of Archive. 4-mana 2/4 with Vigilance, and he has like half of a ghostly prison. And it really, sure it won't stop someone like intent on killing you, but half of a ghostly prison is still enough political incentive to have people not attack you. And from my experience, people are a lot less being like, people will say a ghostly prison and be like, I need to kill that because it'll generate them too much political advantage over the course of the game, where they see Baird and they're like, I don't need to deal with that, they can have their political advantage now, it'll die at the next board wipe, it'll be fine. And it lets you just reap that advantage a little bit earlier and have your opponent save their disenchants for other people's stuff. Captain of the Mists, which is a 2 and a blue for a 2/3, that whenever another human enters the battlefield under control, you can untap it. And you pay 1 in blue to tap or untap target permanent. So this is some interesting applications. One is late game, you have a ton of mana. You can use it to untap Chulane to get additional bounces. Another thing you can do is you can... Words, how do you talk? Words are hard. You can use it to tap down your opponent's stuff as kind of like a general, you're thinking you're like general tapper effects. Granted, it's a bit expensive, but it's flexibility, and it's one of those cards which, like, it's in a very okay effect, but the flexibility of it gives you so much benefit. Custody Soul Color, which is 1 white for a 1/2 with melee, so it attacks at least as a 2/3. And it reanimates something based on the number of players you're attacking this turn. I've talked about this before, but I mean, if you just like send like 2 tokens at other people and one Custodial Scholar and another one, you get to reanimate anything with mana like 3 or less. And if you're throwing away like a couple of tokens to get back a real creature, that's just a good value. Daxos of Milites, which is 1 white-blue for 2/2 that can't be blocked with by big things. And essentially when he deals combat damage to a player, you get to essentially kind of like a really demure effect where you get to cast their top card of the library if you have to pay for it, but you have to get to cast the top card of the library. And it just like, I like playing with my opponent's decks, and it's a fun way to do it. And he's a decent creature, and you get some life out of it. So if it's a big spell and you can't cast it. Unfortunately, it is cast and not play, so you cannot play lands off of it, unfortunately. But yeah. Alright, we got Frontline Medic, which is 3 mana 3/3 with Battalion. So if it and 2 other creatures attack, all your creatures gain indestructible until end of turn. And which is like nice, because like at the end of the day, like even with Bant, this is still kind of like a creature aggro deck, and just making sure you're not having to throw away creatures just to get in a little bit of damage is really nice and really useful for your deck. It also has the ability of you can sacrifice it to counter a spell with X in it unless they play 3, which is not always relevant, but they also always forget about it. It's just so nice when they're like, yeah, I tap out Death of the Deathless for 16, and I'm like, sack Frontline Medic, counter it. And they're like, what? I didn't see that. It was like, even though it was like on board, and honestly, on board counters are the most satisfying. I'm not actually running any counter spells in this deck. It's not really the thing that this deck is wanting to do. And we're Militia Captain, which is a 2 mana 2/2, but if the main bring up upkeep, if I have 4 more creatures, which this isn't that hard to do, you flip it. And she turns into Westvale Cult Leader, and she's as big as how many creatures you control, and makes a human cleric every turn. That she's battlefield. It's a human that bumps out other humans. It's just fine. Hero of Precinct 1. We have a fair few multicolored cards, so this 2 mana 2/2 that makes 1/1s whenever you cast a multicolored spell is very good. It happens triggers off Chulane and so many of our creatures, and we have a fair few monocolored creatures, but if you just get a few tokens out of this, I'm real happy with how much, like, the value I'm getting out of her. Increasing Devotion, which is a 5 mana sorcery that makes 5 1/1s. You can flash it back for 9 mana to make 10 1/1s. It's just a nice instant board state. You gotta have troops on the ground. It doesn't really synergize with Chulane that well, but having humans is nice. Juniper Order Ranger, which is a 3 blue and a white for 2/4. Whenever another creature enters battlefield under your control, you'd put a +1/+1 counter on them, and a +1 counter on Juniper Order Ranger. Like, he's one that benefits from playing lots of creatures and like betting out, and they all get bigger, he gets bigger, and we're all happy at the end of the day. Yay, Juniper Order Ranger. Knight of New Alara, which is 2 green-white for 2/2, and each other multicolored creature gets +1/+1 for each of its colors. So all of our multicolored stuff is now that bigger. Chulane just gets +3/+3, and while this isn't quite a multicolored deck, it's a human, and it pumps a fair amount of their deck, and it's like it's a situational lord, but it's a pretty decent lord for the things it does pump. Lavinia, Azorius Renegade. It's a Azorius for each opponent can't cast creature spells with normal cast greater than the number of lands that player controls, and whenever an opponent casts a spell, if no mana was spent to cast it, counter that spell. This is not a deck that's, it hates an opponent's, but like, it's just a card that keeps your opponents fair, and she's a human, and can shut down some strategies, and yeah, just kind of like, just a nice little human hate bear that will make your opponents mad, but can really stop some unfair strategies, because at the end of the day, Human Tribal is an extremely fair deck, and if your opponents are trying to be anything sneaky, you will quickly be outcast. Humans, a lot of the time, your main strategy is to kind of sit under the radar until you can be in a position where you can just win the game. Be it with like a nice Alpha Strike with a nice Triumphal Hordes. That's usually how the deck wins. With my Celestia version, it's usually just I sit back and people are like, oh, look at you with your little humans. I'm not going to worry about you. And it's like 10 turns later, I'm just like, okay, I have Autric and I cast Triumphal Hordes. You can't block. I attack you all for lethal infect damage. So yeah. But Lavinia just helps kind of slow down some of those unfair decks. Mentor of the Meek. Humans are small, and getting card advantage is good. Like, even if Chulane gets shut down, having redundant card advantage engines is very useful, and Mentor helps you there. Audric, Master Tactician. I just mentioned him, but he's a 4-mana 3/4 strike, and whenever he and at least 3 creatures attacks, you get to choose how combat works. You get to choose which creatures block, and how they block. Effectively, it means if you attack with 4 creatures, your guys are unblockable. That's how it's happening most of the time, unless they have a creature you really, like a utility creature, you really just want to like throw in front of Audric and kill. But mostly he's just like, he just gives all your creatures unblockable, and that's very good for an aggro deck. Palace Sentinels. I always include at least one card in my decks that can enable the Monarch. Well, I guess my Celestia themed deck doesn't, because there's no Celestia themed Monarch cards. It's a 4-mana 2/4 that makes you the Monarch when it enters battlefield. It just enables the monarchy. There's someone who said that you can bounce back your hand and cast Chulane to just become the Monarch again, which is like neat tech, but it's your creature aggro deck. Just attack them and get the Monarch back that way. Raf Capuchin, Ship's Mage. We have a fair few legendaries in this deck. And giving them flash is just a nice tech to just sit back, flash things in the end of their turn, and have more forces than they're counting on. Also just get Chulane triggers while they're doing that. Flash in Chulane at the end of their turn, right before your turn, so you have a full board of untapped mana to just go off of Chulane and not have to worry about board wipes or anything before getting back to you to really do cool stuff with Chulane. Yeah. Skyward Eye Prophets, who is a 6-mana for 3 and a Bant for 3 with Vigilance, with a tap ability that is essentially Chulane's ability. So, real top card library, if it's land, put into play, lowest put in your hand. You don't draw it, you have to, if it's a land, you have to play that land, and there's some slight differences, but just kind of a redundant for the same effect that this deck kind of wants already. So, not much else to say. Thraben Doomsayer, which is a 3-mana 2/2 that you're mostly just using the Fateful Hour is not relevant. You're tapping him to make 1/1s. So he's just a 1/1 every turn. If you get a few tokens out of him, that's great. If not, oh well. And Tomic, Distinguished Advocate. Kind of like the Lavinia, will just kind of shut down some strategies that are trying to do some shenanigans that you're not into. White for a 2/3 flying, and essentially it just shuts down any lands shenanigans. And yeah, no lands for you. Right, on to just removal, like some of the more nuts and bolts of how the deck works. Beast Within, we're not in black, so we don't have like our Vindicate effects. And just being able to hit anything with 1 card is just a good effect. Bounty Agent, I mean, it's a human that you can sack to destroy legendary permanents. And any format that revolves around legendary creatures, that's not bad. Just like a 2-mana kill thing. I like that. Especially if you have like your Renegade Rallies or Custodian Soul Colors and you're reanimating this like every turn and just like, beautiful. Devout Chaplain, which is 3-mana 2/2, and you can tap her and tap 2 other creatures you control to exile target artifact enchantment. I love these cards. These are my pet cards. They're one of the reasons I love humans as a tribe. It's kind of like banding together to do a thing. And granted, she's not amazing, but it is a repeatable disenchant effect and is quite nice. And also, remember that guy that like untaps your creatures for 2 mana? Like, if you have a pretty white warrior, like exiling like all their like mana rocks and stuff, like multiples per turn, that is very nice. Forsake the Worldly, which is 2 and white for an instant exile target artifact or enchantment when it has no cycling. I run this because I have deep hatred for the Theros gods, and this hits those Theros gods just like beautiful. And if it's not useful, you cycle it. You can't go wrong with Forsake the Worldly. It's really just like for any sort of budget thing. Oh, it's a good card. Yes. Essentially, if you're like not running, like if you're running a white deck and not a black deck, that you're running like all like the Utterance and Anguish to Makings, things like that. Forsake the Worldly is not bad, like because you're gonna want some naturalized effects to just get your well-rounded attacks. And yeah. This is the component to the Devout Chaplain, and that's Gallows at Willow Hill, which is a 3-mana artifact. You may pay 3, tap it, and 3 humans you control to destroy target creature, and they get a 1/1 spirit. Ooh, you get to hang them and turn them into a ghost. It is one that is not very good, but I love the flavor of it. And I run it anyway, because it's my pet card. Guild Spire Avenger, which is banned for a 2/2 with Exalted. Granted, you're not really using Exalted, you're really wanting to attack with more than 1 creature in this deck. But you can tap it to destroy target creature that dealt damage to you this turn. So, granted, you're not actually going to use this to kill something that often. It's mostly used kind of as a political tool of like, hey, if you attack me, I can just like kill your thing. So it's kind of that like sit back political advantage. Yeah, and that's kind of the point. Intrepid Hero, which is just a 3-mana 1/1 that you can just tap to destroy target creature 4 or greater. It's my Atraxa killer, because I don't like Atraxa. They can die to my Intrepid Hero. It's neat. Like, I like to have my removal like on theme with like the deck, and like nice humans that are like killing big monsters and stuff. That's what I want to do. And then good cards like Path to Exile. I run Path to Exile because it's Path to Exile. I need to pick up a Sword Splashers because I probably should run that too if I'm running Path. But yeah, Path to Exile because it's Path to Exile. It's Path to Exile. You're running a white deck. If you can afford it and you have a spare Path to Exile, you should be running Path to Exile. It's Path to Exile. Now to wipes. First up we have Dustodon, which is, on the wipe side, is destroy all creatures of power 3 or greater. A lot of, like, assuming you don't have any, like, anthems out, a lot of our creatures are 2 or less, and that's very good, and we don't, when they just kind of like a pseudo one-sided board wipe, it's not bad for us. And Dawn, even with anthems, is, return all creatures with power 2 or less from your graveyard to your hand. so we get to recast them. Notably, recast, we get a handful of creatures that we can recast to get more Chulane triggers. Yes. Evacuation. 3 blue. Return all creatures to their owner's hand. Yep, this is what we want to do. We get benefits from recasting our creatures. We also have extra BGB effects that we want to do, and if the board gets out of control, this is like, it's not a wipe, but it's like, it resets the board in our favor. And yes, that's what I want to do. Notably, I also want to get the Miracle one, but I don't have a spare one of those. And I want to pick up, I mean, ideally I would also like to run Cyclonic Rift in this deck, because Cyclonic Rift, but they are very expensive, and the one I have is my cube. But in the meantime, I'm also running Fumigate, because, I mean, as one of the cheaper board wipes, I just really like Fumigate, because it wipes the board and gives you a pretty healthy buffer of life that, like, even if you lose some stuff, you're up on top and you're gaining something from that board wipe, and that's where I like to be. And like things like Phyrexian Rebirth don't really make sense of flavor in the deck. And now on to just miscellaneous cards to make the deck tick. Heroic Intervention, which is just 1 and a green for instant that gives all my permanents hexproof and indestructible. It's just general board wipe insurance for when I don't want it to be wiped, and I can just be like, yes, you cannot touch me. And now the board's wiped, and now, hey look, I have a creature board that can start attacking you all, and my board is safe, yes. And it's also very cheap. Mana cost wise, not actually dollar cost. I didn't realize how expensive this card has gotten. Honestly, rightly so, because it's very good. Lightning Greaves, because we are a creature-based deck, and Chulane wants to be protected. Mass Appeal. There are better draw spells, but this one is specifically a human draw spell. It's 2 in blue that draws a card for each human I have. Which can actually be a lot of cards, but yeah. Skull Clamp. I mean, we make a lot of incidental tokens, and just turning them into cards is good. Did you know that Skull Clamp is a good card? That's my pro magic tip for you for the day. Skull Clamp is good, kids. Swiftfoot Boots. I mean, again, it's still a creature-based deck, and we want to give their things haze. We're not running red, so we can't run anger. My shame, Triumph of the Hordes. It's a very good card, and I feel bad for running it because enough people have complained when I run it, but it's just so good. 4 mana, all your creatures get +1/+1, and in fact, it ends games. It's probably the best win con of this deck. It's very good. Triumphs of the Hordes is a good card. You should be running it any sort of go-wide deck, token deck, that sort of thing. Run Triumph of the Hordes. Like, combo decks will be unfair, control decks will be unfair, these brutal grindy synergy decks will be unfair. Aggro needs to be unfair too, and Triumph of the Hordes is the way for aggro to be unfair. Ulvenwald Mysteries. This is just kind of more some board wipe insurance that whenever another creature I control, non-token creature control dies, I do investigate, so I get to like get cards eventually. And whenever I sack a clue, I may go on one. So it kind of gives you kind of like a reserve to like kind of get back into the game, because you are a creature-based deck, and if you don't have any draw spells in hand, you can peter out, and this is kind of insurance against that. Unbreakable Formation. Honestly, mostly using it for the non-addendum side, which is just 3 mana, all my creatures get indestructible. So it's kind of just being run as like a Boros Charm, because I can't run Boros Charm, because I'm Bant. And, I mean, sometimes, like, you will just use the addendum side to just get a good strike in, or, like, a good kill in, and, yeah, which gives, it's fine. Yeah, so that is the deck. There's a few cards that I want to mention that I just beyond my budget right now that I want to add in, but I'm aware of. Door of Destinies. We're casting a lot of humans. This will pump them up. It's just a good anthem effect for our humans, but it's like $5, and that's more. You can like pick up so many $5 cards before it gets really out of your budget. Eventually, I'll pick up a Door of Destinies for this deck. Erratic Portal. I mentioned this. Also, Crystal Shard. I remember that while I was filming that is also a card and should be in the deck. But Erratic Portal, it essentially lets us, it's a format artifact that lets you pay 1 and tap it to bounce something to its owner's hand unless its control plays 1. You can use it to like do some cool stuff if your opponents want to tap out. It's mostly be like, hey, I return my own thing to my hand. Do I want to pay 1? No. And then I return my hand and recast it. So it's kind of like a cheap version of Chulane's effect because it's only 1 mana to activate and not 3. Also, it's not on the commander, which is like a bit nicer. Champion of the Parish. It just was more expensive than I was willing to pay for, like, it is a good 1-drop, but it's not like a few dollars good that it would really make that deck that much better. Cloudstone Curio is stupidly expensive and needs a reprint. It has been reprinted once as a Kaladesh Masterpiece, and that is not a reprint. But whenever a non-artifact permanent you control comes to player control, you may return another permanent you control that shares a permanent type with it to its owner's hand. I wonder how you think that would be good in a Chulane deck. And then finally, Zendikar Resurgent. Just extra mana, and also just kind of that effect of whenever we cast a spell, drawing more cards so we can just keep chaining our humans and just generating that board. Oh, and actually finally, Noble Hierarch. Because I don't want to pay $40 for a Mana Dork. Even if it is very good, I'm not paying $40 for a Mana Dork. Oh, and actually finally, Cathar's Crusade. It's on flavor because it's Human Tribal on Innistrad, and yeah, it's Cathar's Crusade. It's just another good finisher. Oh, and actually finally, I had a lot more things to sing about. This one's more gross. It's Venser. 4 mana, 2/2 flash. When you get to remand something or bounce something, and when you start like actually like that plus like a Cloudstone Curio, that is what we call gross. But he's also like $10. Is that it? Are you gonna make me sell? No, Venser is last. But yeah, so that is my my Chulane deck. Like, what do you think? Like, is there any like good like blue humans that I overlooked? Because blue humans is probably the color for humans I am least familiar with, just because this is like only the second iteration of the deck that has included blue for humans. So I'm really excited for this deck. Honestly, most of the commanders and the new Brawl Ducons I was actually very interested in. But also I was like, Chulane like really works for that human archetype and what the human deck wants to do. Because it's like, with my Selesnya deck, I was already running like lots of effects. It's like, I draw a card and like creature cast and things like that. And here that same effect is on my commander. And honestly, Sigarda just wasn't doing that much for me. So I'm excited for this revamp of the deck. And also, like, would people actually be interested in like the full like story about Chulane? Like, not Chulane, Chulane. Chulane. It's Chulane. Irish names are hard. But yeah. So, well, that's the video. And I hope you have a wonderful night. And I hope you have wonderful dreams. And as always, may our stories smile upon you.